Hello and welcome back to MDG Media. We are excited to be bringing you this final round MPO lead card coverage of the 2024 Järva Open X Tyyni tournament. Really fun final day here with a stacked lead card on a very attackable course. This last day had a little bit more tricky weather with some previous lightning delays, but lead card gonna come in hot. I'm Connor Wood, and with me, Elias Luukkonen.
What's up, Connor? What's up, viewers? Nice to be here once again, and as you mentioned, some uncertainty with the timing of the lead card starting their round, but now the wind is down. Especially the back nine open holes are going to be very scoreable for our players, starting off with Joona Heinänen. Solid tournament so far. He's driving the disc great, and his putt has never looked crispier, in my opinion.
His game is looking really good right now. Another player looking better every season, Hjalmar Fredriksson, holding it down for the Swedes here in Stockholm. Left-handed player, great at crafting lines. Right-handed forehand though, interesting combination.
And Eeka Kölhi, very technically skilled player, sometimes struggling with consistency, but he's been very consistent so far in the tournament. Great putting as well, has made plenty of C2s.
Rounding out our lead card, Davidsson, really strong performances already this season, and last, a well-known player on the Disc Golf Pro Tour Europe. And we'll kick it off here on hole number 1, a 121-meter par 3, the fairway sloping right to left with OB lining left and long here. A lot of players are going to be playing a backhand Anheuser air shot turnover or the backhand roller, also shaping really naturally. The key here is to have a rightwards moving shape that tries to hit this late gap and enter this well-guarded green.
Going to start from Finland, Joona Heinänen.
I'd say if you have a very understable roller disc in your bag that you can trust out there to the left with a flat release and make sure that it turns over into the hillside and flips over all the way, I think it's a pretty simple hole. But Joona going for this air shot. Last round he threw it perfectly, and this round almost acing. And that's a little bit long. We'll have to figure out whether he's actually in the OB long or not.
Teeing off from Sweden, Hjalmar Fredriksson.
For Hjalmar here, going to be shaping as a long backhand hyzer. Potentially flipping it up to flat for distance, but he has a ton of power and he's going to be looking to pierce this on a low line, finding that late ground play into the hill. Beautifully done there as he sets it right into circle 1. Great distance control as well, pushing that OB long a little bit, but well safe.
Eeka, Kölhi.
And as you saw the OB line, the OB string between the OB poles, it looks like Joona is also safe as he didn't cross the string. This is Eeka with a very understable disc for the roller. Perfect disc choice, as you can see, even with a slight cut angle. Hitting the ground, he's still trying to come back, and just unfortunately too much cut.
Davidsson.
His disc turning over finally, but it's a very touchy hole for that. I feel like the OB long makes the roller slightly more dangerous than what it would be otherwise.
Daniel as well looking to shape this. He has it more to the right early on and going to be curling into the upward slope, but coming in super fast. We don't have a great view of the string there, but I believe also safe. Going to be looking slightly downhill.
Pretty scary putt to start off the round. He's going far downhill, and a great looking effort. Not the longest of comebacks either, just 6.5 meters away for the par.
Eeka as well, a little bit nervy having that high release out of the hand, unable to drop in time. We'll see if Joona is able to capitalize on this birdie look. and very smooth. You mentioned Elias, his putt is looking better than ever, and we know him as a great thrower. When he can complete the short game as well, he will be a force on the course.
Hjalmar matching on hole number 1. And it's already gonna be a bit of separation between Joona and Hjalmar and the rest of the card as Daniel. That's a big miss on hole number 1. We mentioned in round 2 his putting stroke did look a little bit nervous on the earlier holes. It did improve as the round went on, and hoping for that to happen again, because that definitely was pulled pretty far to the right out of the hand.
As we see, in fact, no pars for our lead card. We move on to hole 2. Elias, what is the preferred line here?
Hole 2, 96 meters. It's a pretty straight mid-range shot with the preferred miss being more left than right. There's this gap that you have to hit, and other than that, the main danger on the hole is going to be a huge drop-off behind the basket, long and right. So anything that goes over this hillside is likely rolling down or sliding down the hill at least a few meters, if not all the way down the hill. You'd really want to land a little bit short here and slide your mid-range up to the basket.
Joona very early out of the hand, quite similar to his shot in round 1 as well, but super fortunate. If this can settle, very dramatic shot given the ground play. I mean, the majority of shots that fade left into that hill don't get such a large reaction. Normally crashing into the left side is pretty safe. Hjalmar as well finding the slope, but a very good tree that will keep him within a manageable putt distance.
Both drives within putting distance, but not what you want on this hole. That is, interestingly enough, playing as the easiest hole of the course for this final round, averaging at 2.64. And shots like Eeka, I feel like that's almost the average drive on this hole. And really better drives ending up more closer to that 5-meter range.
And Daniel, I think, playing the intended line very safe, straight with a leftwards finish. He's known as a player who has fantastic tee to green stats, one of the best throwers of the disc on the Pro Tour here in Europe. And when he can connect on the putts, another player who is really tough to beat. Joona up first, and speaking of putts made, he is 2 for 2 now. That one really healthy and very nice speed control.
Beautiful angle out of the hand, no chance of spitting out. Let's see Eeka here, a little shaky again, just like on hole 1. High release, now a little bit low, a little bit stabby. And you have to think, Eeka not being a player that has played in many lead cards, maybe the nerves are getting to him just slightly in this final round.
Yeah, he was very calm in round 2, coming in as the leader after round 1, but these final day feelings can be a little bit different here. But bag on, he's good for that one. And a good bounce back from Daniel as well.
For sure, and even going back to the nerves, I do have to say that as a player, I feel like there was a more serious vibe on the course today. I feel like everybody in the field was playing for something more than in that moving day round 2, which is often the case in the final rounds. Everybody's dialing in their game. And you can see it in the scores. Usually the scores are the best in the final round. As we're moving on to another very scoreable hole, hole number 3. Connor, tell me about it.
Another very attackable one here at only 103 meters. The real dangers here are OB lining the left-right as well as long for the right-handed players. The forehand hyzer shaping very naturally. If you have a preferred hyzer release and a good arm speed, this backhand hyzer shown here by Joona is also very available. It just can bring into play the OB a little bit more, as well as that initial high floor, but he's done well 2 days in a row to find himself on the green. Daniel going to show us the more traditional line here.
Beautiful release, kind of a bad air bounce out of the hand, and this needs to finish right and just barely does not. Bad skip, might have even skipped off the bush, and he's going to be pretty far back for the putt, even though his disc is near the edge of the circle. He's going to be putting from circle 2's edge. And Hjalmar here, great correction from round number 1, where he went OB similarly as Daniel, this time just a park job.
You saw the height on that Hjalmar, just barely scraping by that last Guardian bush. Eeka here, going to that Anheuser turnover for the right-handed player and splits those late bushes to slide just up to circle's edge. This sort of corner can leave players with a longer putt than they might like going OB. Daniel was not able to cross back in on the friendlier side and will be left with that short bogey save. We go to Eeka for the birdie.
That's a good hit there, just outside of circle 1. Kind of what we expect from him as the nerves are calming down. He has been incredible from circle 2 so far.
In round 1, Eeka was the putting leader statistically in strokes gained, as Joona is setting a real pace here, letting his card mates know if you want to keep up with him, you're going to have to play hot. And Hjalmar has also found 2 of the first 3, currently just 2 strokes behind Joona.
And this is Daniel for another bogey on the scorecard. Interestingly enough, I feel like out of the first 3 holes, the holes that play best for his game, which is the roller on 1 and the basic forehand on 3, him getting the bogeys on those holes and not the more difficult shot for him, the straight backhand.
And we see the field here. Some good scores are being put up, but a lot of players still on the course given that lightning delay.
Disc Sport and Innova share the same values and understanding how the sport should grow.
Rene has always been a great partner of Innova. His vision of disc golf in Estonia and the Baltic region is exactly what we're looking for.
Our goal would be to grow the sport, grow the brand, so that eventually, in the long run, Innova will be number 1 in Europe again.
Moving on to one of the trickiest birdies on the course, hole number 4. Just 100 meters of distance, but the curve you have to make is going to be very extreme and difficult to get the disc into the circle. The drone is flying through the main gap, which is what most players are aiming for a forehand with a huge skip, hopefully skipping over this valley that the basket is placed on the other side of. Also, if your forehand or backhand hyzer for Hjalmar comes out a little bit early right, it's also a great play to miss a couple of those right side trees and still skip even more right.
And Joona, known as a predominantly backhand thrower, pulls out his forehand there. We see him just a little bit inside, but filtering to the most common landing zone at the bottom. Going to be having a uphill look at the birdie from about 14-15 meters. We go to Hjalmar here. Has this very low, he's going to need to find the right patch of earth for the skip, and found just the perfect spot because that was an incredible delivery to the green. One of the few players who I think was able to put it that close.
And Eeka, this is the other option you can do. There's not a lot of room for the roller though, so you really need to start it off on the left side of the fairway if you want to find the fairway on the roller, just like Daniel is doing here. That is the perfect looking line, very fast, and you can see curling up into the circle, but that hillside pulling it back down. I'd say still a very solid shot on this hole. Only 16% of the field birdieing this.
Eeka still with some work to do. Able to shape it through the gap, but leaving himself a long putt. Gonna be a tricky par. We go to Joona to try and find 4 in a row. And he almost does it. He's hoping to see this settle, but you see him turn his back. Bit of a heartbreaker, even coming right back to his feet. He is going to be putting effectively the exact same putt he just missed now, but for par.
It was a great run on the last one. This one not so much, missing the line as well. And while that is a tough break for Joona, I love to see it for the drama of the tournament, especially with Hjalmar being right there in 5 meters.
Very clean. You see Hjalmar with quite a short putting stroke, but has a lot of snap at that final release off the wrist and fingers, able to generate a lot of force without much movement. And he is looking to close that gap there. Now only one behind Joona. But after that tap in for his bogey, I believe, gonna be tied up, and as you mentioned, Elias, dramatic at the top. Potentially a little shifting of the seats here, as these final podium positions on this last day are still very much up for grabs.
Exactly, and these players have to be a little bit cautious of the chase car chasing them, as there are players a few strokes back and there are a lot of them. Everybody's shooting well, as we are not really having a lot of wind today. Moving on to the island hole. What's the play here?
There's quite a few options. This does play as hazard, so if you don't stick the island, you will have to putt from where you are with a penalty. There's a whole variety of lines. The backhand hyzer, perhaps the most intended and traditional. A lot of players also throw the backhand approach disc straight at the front mound and try to skip off the front hill. Alternatively, the forehand flex for the right-handed player straight at it. It really is a pick your shot situation. What are you confident with on angle and speed control to try and hit the hill and slow it down quickly? Perched at the top, Hjalmar has done well to do just that.
Interestingly, going with the right-hand backhand, which is Hjalmar's second shot. He has the left-hand backhand and the right-hand forehand, not the backhand. And this is another play that I usually really like, but Daniel just missing the line to the left, unfortunately, and he's going to be barely to the hazard. Still a very makeable par putt though.
Joona has this high and wide, catching that back slope. You see just how quickly it comes into play. I think importantly, you really want to hit the top or front of the hill, because anything that comes down with speed onto that backside often filters long. We'll see if Eeka is able to make the adjustment on the hyzer line. Nice looking disc there, but not a friendly result off the tree.
I really liked Eeka's angle there, but even he was pushing it a little bit too far. You can see he hit the backside of that tree from the T angle. So definitely a bit too far, and the frustration is slightly setting in for a player that is usually very calm. And Joona, important par save attempt here. That's going to be good for the par. Potentially only losing one stroke to Hjalmar if he can make his putt from around 5 meters away.
Elias, which approach to this hole do you think is the most risk-free? We saw a lot of danger even for our lead card here.
I really think the high hyzer with an overstable mid-range or an overstable approach disc is the least risky play here. But both of our players, Eeka and Daniel, who went for that line, just put it too far. You need to throw something that stalls out at the end, that almost moves only sideways and not forward after you get past the tree that you have to go around. So definitely something to think about maybe in the next years playing this event, as we're moving on to hole number 6. A very satisfying shot to throw, 148 meters downhill. Playing much shorter, probably closer to 115 as far as how far you have to throw the disc to get all the way to the basket. You want to hit this gap the drone is flying through, and if you're gonna miss to either side, miss to the right, because many of the times your disc is gonna funnel through some trees and find yourself in the circle, potentially circle 2. And disc choice here, usually a straight to stable fairway driver. Of course for Hjalmar, probably more of a flip up.
You see this late turning shot, how much of the Anheuser flight can it hold? That late stability brings him into one of those trees, but there is a little bit of luck involved as you try to get cleanly into the green. Even really good shots can often get caught up at about circle's edge. We go now to Daniel. Had a very interesting result on this hole in the previous round. Make sure to check it out, otherwise we'll see the correction, hopefully from him there, and he's done well to hit the front of the hill. Looks to have settled softly. We will see Joona now.
Yeah, Daniel, I feel like he had the perfect shot, but that's what happens on this hole. Sometimes you might hit the hill and stick there, sometimes you skip up. Let's see if Joona gets the better result there. Almost identical shot to Daniel, but just the perfect result. He's gonna have a good bounce back after the bogey and the par in the last 2 holes.
Eeka getting a very turned over release, and even he looked confused with the angle that came out on. You can see from his scorecard he's already found a lot of trouble. For a player who was in first and then tied first in the beginning rounds, I think not the start he's looking for, and we'll see him with a very obstructed look trying to access the green. These gaps are no more than a few meters in the best possible looks, and he's up there but not quite parked. Hjalmar with the putt.
A lot of speed, just missing the chains. And while that was a lot of speed for such a distance, Hjalmar has actually slowed his putt down from the previous seasons a little bit. He used to putt even much harder than right now. As Daniel collecting the birdie. Having a rough start, but maybe he can build some momentum from this birdie on hole number 6. Not the most difficult birdie, 25% of the field getting it, but most importantly, it's not a bogey you want to take. Only 8 bogeys on the hole and just a couple of doubles, and that's gonna be one of the bogeys, unfortunately.
Very nice for Joona there to capitalize on that opportunity. I think visually this hole looks difficult. You see the long distance, the downhill, the very obstructed green, but it is pretty favorable for the par play. If you wanted a lot of errant shots, you can scramble the 3.
As we saw Mick Mötz, Dennis Augustsson, the most significant movers up the leaderboard, and moving on to hole number 7, 108 meters uphill. You have a very late gap to hit here. You can really choose your shot. You can throw a straight shot or a bit of a left to right moving one if you're more comfortable with that. Disc choice can be between a fairway driver thrown very hard or a distance driver thrown with a medium power. It's all about just either hitting this gap, or if not hitting this gap, at least keep the line somewhere near the gap so you have a line or a chance to go through.
And this is a line not a lot of players are opting to take, as you bring the tree line more into play than with the straight line, but a great result for Daniel there, playing the crashing hyzer. It does bring those trees early on in the fairway pretty much out of play. You're just less likely to be totally parked. Joona, however, showing the intended line, absolutely dialed on his angle control, digs the hill, and he is well within bullseye. Textbook execution here of hole 7. We will see Eeka look to reproduce that.
Almost the same, just not quite having the same hold, not quite the same forward push. You can see Eeka threw the disc significantly slower than Joona, just hammering it into the hillside. And for lefty, Hjalmar has to go for a similar shot as Daniel went with the right side. Great shot, but a terrible result on the green. He hit the gap pretty much perfectly, missing one of the edge corner trees, and that's pretty much the worst case scenario for that shot.
And I think these treacherous greens, certainly a theme, particularly on the front 9 of this Järva layout. A lot of them with significant slopes. This one particularly obstructed as well with how many small trees there are, often compromising the putting stroke that you might like, maybe even the footing. Daniel here looks to have a straight line and does secure the birdie. So he gets himself back under par now here, pushing towards the back 9.
And while this hole does have that difficult green, otherwise it's quite simple. It's the third easiest hole on the course. 43% birdie, definitely a hole you would love to pick up.
Hole number 8, however, do not be deceived. It looks like a straight 96 meters, and although it can be played that way, a lot of players will opt for more of a flex shape, ensuring that they end to the left. You see this really severe slope off to the right of the green, and even landing it straight to the pin or on the left side of it, these rollaways are particularly nasty. You really want to try and hit something flat landing and just have it settle anywhere with a reasonable putt. This is a hole where the 2 is very manageable, but so is the 6 or the 5.
Absolutely. And even good shots can sometimes roll away, as I would call that a pretty good shot. He was a little bit long, just hitting the bush the wrong way, and that's going to be far down the hill. I think what really gives perspective to how often the rollaways happen on this hole is that every player on this hole that was on the fairway, which means on the stats, it means that you're either inside of circle 2 or on the fairway, not off the fairway, for example, in a bush. All of the fairway hits were also in circle 2. So every player that missed circle 2 either rolled all the way down the hill or was in a bush.
Yeah, and you see just how quickly they accelerate as well. That wall set up by the organizers to catch the majority of discs, but certainly not all of them. It does not span the full width of the hill, and even if they pick up speed, it can hop over that wall. We see Hjalmar here trying to get that late entrance to the green, but as you mentioned, Elias, straight into the bush. It's really tricky because to land completely flat, you want to utilize a little bit of understability. For the right-handed player, though, that's far too dangerous, as you might play then to the right side. You really want something pretty overstable and try to not land it on edge. Eeka there, just getting himself up into the green. Daniel as well.
Hjalmar here, scary putt. He's going to be fading down the hill. Good cage hit though. And Joona, despite being pretty high up on the hill, he does have some sort of a look to the basket. Very brave run, but airballing, and he's gonna pay a price for it.
Didn't go as far as maybe we thought here, but even with that low ceiling, compromised on the comebacker. I think this probably has to be, Elias, the most dangerous green on the course.
I agree. I think the only rival for this hole screen might be the next hole screen, which we're gonna see in a second. But a very quick shout out on this hole. Mick Mötz, who we already saw on the scoreboard, was actually able to ace this hole in the final round. Incredible shot, and that's the best way to not roll down the hill, I guess.
Sick ace, shout out to him. We will move on to hole 9. 178 meter par 4. Players will start with this open look. You want to fade something before this large birch on the right of your screen. As the drone now approaches the tunnel on their second shot, players will be forced to play through this double mando, where they will access, once again, as you mentioned, Elias, potentially the first or second most dangerous greens, a steep drop off directly behind the basket. And the basket, if you're pin high, you're already on the slope. It's really tricky to actually stick the green, even with a slow moving approach. A lot of players will be executing this shot in 2. Fantastic high hyzer from Daniel. The more left you are off the tee, as long as you don't go too far in distance, the more it will open up your approach. These guys are just trying to swing one in, settle in the sweet spot.
See, I'm a little bit surprised both of those guys are trying to go around the tree, as it's a riskier line. It does have more distance potential, but as we saw, Daniel skipping pretty far left, and if you go right side of the tree, the width control is just extremely tight. As Hjalmar, very difficult drive for the lefty, he's going to be out of position, and Joona going very quickly, seemingly.
And Joona in the previous day, I believe actually missing the mando off the tee. So good to make the correction on the distance control, bring it a little bit shorter. Hjalmar just scraping by through the mando off the skip. That was, in fact, missing it. I thought that looked good from our angle, but must have snuck by the incorrect side of that mando tree. Going to be an unfortunate penalty, taking him to the drop zone. Joona, a really touchy shot here. You just want to land it short And as a result, you see that a little bit inside and a bit soft. I think that's a really common mistake for players trying to get up to this basket.
Hjalmar needs to slow down. You can see the slope of the green is trying to pull all of these discs coming in a little bit hot towards the down slope. Daniel needs to get around the last tree. Really both Joona and Daniel with suboptimal approaches. Same thing for Eeka, although he did have a pretty bad angle to approach the green from. Pretty fortunate there to sit down, honestly.
And a lot of players might consider the layup from there, but I think Eeka, knowing if he wants to push it, he needs that stroke. Daniel finding it, also no fear on that complete death putt. We'll see if Joona can match this now. If he is to miss this, he will very likely be 15 or 20 meters away.
And that's a huge miss. That could be a tournament determining miss, as he could have had that easy stroke on Hjalmar. Hjalmar is getting a bogey here, missing the Mando, and this is for par. Very important putt, not losing that hypothetical stroke to his layup play that he could have done.
And what an exciting front nine. We see the current standings. Joona Heinänen, our leader, at 18 under. Right behind him on our lead card, Hjalmar Fredriksson, 16 under, representing Sweden in his home country. Daniel at 14 and Eeka at 12 under. With the rest of the field really setting good scores today, it is a tight battle at the top with only 9 holes remaining. We appreciate you for joining us here, and make sure to tune in for the final 9 holes to see who will be crowned your 2024 Järva Open MPO champion. We'll see you there.